What's up, Vault Hunters? I'm SchviftyFive, and this is Ultimate Vault Hunters. 3 Zanes in a row, all built and played in different ways, made for some wonderful content for our show producer. But what about Fleck? What about Amara? What about Moze? It's been a while since we visited with the Rampaging Russian, so who better to bring on the show to talk about a new build featuring her new purple tree than Psychotic Wolf? Wolf's premier Moze promises to let you and Iron Cub mow down your enemies in a blaze of glory. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining the conversation. Whether you're joining us on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter, or listening along on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Spotify, we thank you for tuning in and listening to the program. Psychotic Wolf, welcome back. How's it going?
I'm doing really well. How are you? Thanks for having me again.
I'm so glad to have you back on this stream. It's great. Are you staying in for the holidays?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a big movie marathon as a family, and we got a nice big bottle of rum with my name all over it. So it'll be a good time.
Nice, nice. Sounds like a good time. Home, alone, quarantine, just with your family, as it should be.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm going to be staying home as well. And no rum for me, but maybe presents. We'll see.
Have you been a good girl this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of weeks left in the year. It remains to be seen. Maybe I can make up for, I don't know. No, not at all. Not at all. So we have a really cool build to go through. So why don't we just dive right into it?
Let's do it. This is our melee Moze.
Sweet.
So we're going to start with the green tree this time.
Right.
We're gonna read it like a book, like always, you know, top to bottom, left to right.
Right.
So we started off with 4 points in Cloud of Lead because we are doing a lot of incendiary damage, and Cub is with us and he's doing incendiary damage as well. So we're going to benefit from more incendiary damage.
Sweet.
The fun little cool thing. So Bear Soul Cub does not have a turret. So what Gearbox actually gave us was a straight damage increase to Cub. So while he's running around doing damage, why not give him more damage, right? Then we go down to tier 2. We went with Stoke the Embers. Again, we're sticking with the strength of Incendiary and Moze, and we're just bumping up that damage as much as we can.
Nice.
Then we go to the far right. We went Scrappy because we're going to be moving around a lot. We're going to be doing, this is increasing our damage. And when we swap guns, this is actually going to benefit us from swapping guns for our single target. And when we get to the gear, I'll talk about some big numbers that we were able to come out with this build.
Sweet.
Since, again, we're running around on the third tier, we took Rushing Offensive. Because this is a melee build, we're also applying status effect. The purple tree really allows us to apply status effects. So while we're running and those dots are ticking, we're healing.
Ah, fantastic.
So it really works hand in hand. Really, really good. We also put 2 points in Scorching RPM because we wanted to work our way down the tree, and that's giving Cub a little bit more damage. And if we're actually going to be shooting with a Face Puncher, because that is provided in this build, if we hit some crits, we're increasing our crit damage as well.
Nice.
And then the last point in the green tree, we went Specialist Bear because we are increasing Cub's damage. And I think I want to preface, if anyone has not played with Cub yet, any of the skills in Moze's tree that says anything with Iron Bear, it also affects Cub.
Ah.
So that's an important part, because I've had a lot of people come in stream saying, does this affect Cub? Anything with Iron Bear affects Cub.
That's really good to know.
So let's go to the next tree. We're going into the purple tree, our brand new fun tree.
So awesome.
So I'll go a little generic overview, and this is applying status effects. It's helping us with Cub damage and keeping Cub up as long as we possibly can. Okay. Which is really, really interesting. So on the first tier, we're going with Biofuel. We actually have another way to regenerate health. So when myself or Iron Bear or Cub ignites an enemy, we can regenerate. Which is
got a lot of fire damage, so it's going to be great.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Then we went 5 points in Really Big Guns. That's that skill on the top right. That is, again, a straight Iron Bear damage increase, or Iron Cub in this case.
Okay.
Which is, again, nice to have. On tier 2 at the far left, we took Double Time. Moze has movement speed.
Yay! You don't need to rely on Mayhem 10 anymore.
No. So while Cub is active, we can run 12% faster, which is awesome, especially when we're doing melee, because we got to get into melee range.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And then we took 3 points on the skill on the right. That's Explosive Fury. So that is helping us apply status effects and also increasing the status effect damage, which is what this whole build's all about. So
Wonderful.
we skipped tier 3 because we're not really firing a gun mainly. So the increased fire rate is not really benefiting from us.
Okay.
Next tier down on the left, we took this is a big word, Nitro-Trinadium Engines. Basically, we put 5 points in there because we're getting max fuel and we're getting action skill cooldown.
Very useful.
Mainly here, the fuel. We took the skill to the right, 5 points. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. No, sorry. When we're applying a status effect, Iron Cub or Iron Bear, depending on which one you have, will actually regain fuel. But it has diminishing returns. So at a certain point, we're not going to regain any fuel, but in the end, this is helping us maximize the uptime. Next tier down, Feature Creep. Iron Bear gains increased damage and damage resistance. Kind of self-explanatory.
Very useful.
Now, the fun skill on the far right is Superior Firepower. Whenever Moze or Iron Bear / Cub inflicts a status effect on an enemy, they gain increased status effect damage. This is a stacking buff. We can get 5 stacks. So we can increase our status effect damage by 100%.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's really awesome.
And on top of that, the capstone even synergizes even more with that. So whenever we're actually igniting people, which is we're doing that all the time, Iron Bear and Cub does not consume fuel.
So Iron Bear is just staying up all the time.
My max amount of time I've had Cub up is almost 10 minutes.
Wow. Holy crap. That's insane.
Bonkers. And I love every second of it.
I mean, not to jump the shark or anything, but we're doing action skill active annoyance, right?
Actually, we're not.
Ooh, okay. Spoilers. All right. We will continue that at a later time.
Yes, we will.
Okay. So the next tree.
Next tree, we're going to the blue tree.
Okay.
When we come into the gear, we do require some splash damage. So we're going to bump up the splash damage a little bit.
Okay.
So we're taking Fire in the Skags then, because that is one of our OP skills and it has the mayhem scaling. So with our splash, it's giving us that big fire damage.
Great.
And like I said earlier, because Iron Cub benefits from Iron Bear damage, we put 3 points in deadlines. So whenever we kill or even Cub kills an enemy, we get more fuel returned. So if you can see, we got 2 skills now that are actually returning fuel to us.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Very useful.
Then on the second tier, again, because we're doing splash, we took Torg Cross Promotion to increase our splash damage and radius. The radius will actually help a lot here. And then to the right of that, we took 5 points in Stainless Steel Bear for max amount of fuel on Cub. We get more armor and get more Cub damage. And that's our trees.
All right, so let's dive deeper into this build. What augments for your action skill do you take?
So since we're going with the purple tree and we got Cub, we were talking about Cub, he's running around with us. So we're going to take Iron Cub as our action skill. And we are going to grab the augment My Little Friend. And My Little Friend gives Cub an incendiary AR.
Ooh.
So that helps us get more fire dots and helps us gain more fuel and all that working together, right?
Noticing a crazy theme of a lot of fire damage.
Yes, you are.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty common thing to have with Moze, but like this seems excessive.
Right. Like a lot of our damage increases is based on splash or incendiary damage. So we got to go with what's our strengths, right?
Right. All right.
So the other augment that we do, and for those who are new to Moze and maybe don't know this, when you apply Cub goes on one of your weapon slots for Iron Bear. And then the guns that Cub gets is whatever you apply on that other gun. So we chose the salamander here. The salamander normally is never used with Iron Bear, but I chose it because it's fire. It's a flamethrower, and why not? And the other thing was with that salamander, I chose the fuel economy augment because, again, we're saving fuel. We want that uptime as long as we can.
So interested to hear about your action or your anointments. Like, I can't wait. Okay, so what would you say the main rotation of this build is?
The main rotation, if you're going to be mobbing, just have Cub out with you and punch away. We're using a stinger shield, so if your shield does break while you're around enemies, they're just going to explode. Like, it's really a lot of fun, but it's a matter of just running around and punching. The thing, if you have a ranged mob that you got to get, I have provided a face puncher, and if you need to, you can change your artifact and use white elephants and benefit from some of that splash damage that we spec'd into.
Right.
When it comes to a single target mob, like a boss, you're going to actually power things up. So you have a Zaitsev, so you got a debuff. You got a few debuffing tools. Then you're going to activate your Cub to trigger that Nova, and then you're just going to watch the boss melt.
Ooh, nice. I'm sure we'll have some footage of that melting as well.
Yes, we will.
I'm so excited to see it. So what damage builds exist out there that could compare in numbers to this build?
The one that I always like to compare this one to is when Amara was using the Unleash the Dragon. Whenever you hit anything with a red bar or a blue bar, you saw those dots chunk down. Right. And it's a very similar type of build, but because the purple tree helps us augment that even more, we're chunking a little bit more, in my personal opinion.
So you'd say this one is better?
I would say
than the Amara build.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so while we have you here, how did this build fare overall with the True Guardian takedown?
With a few little choices of deciding if you need to go in melee and ranged, you kind of have to think of it strategically when you're coming into certain fights and such.
All right.
It works really well. You just got to really pay attention to your health, of course, because they hurt in the Guardian takedown, especially when you're trying to get close.
Well, you do have that life steal. Don't you have two different life steals in the tree?
We do. So if you're running into a pack that just spawned, you got to get that hit in so that you can start gaining that back, right? You just got to be smart when it comes to that. And even, you know what, if you can jump in and slam will actually trigger the Unleash the Dragon as well. So slams help too.
Do you gain lifesteal from your dots while sprinting?
Yes. Any type of damage with rushing offensive while you're sprinting will heal you.
Great. Okay, so how did this build fare in the crystal activation sections?
You actually have to hide behind a rock and hope they come close. So you want to bait them. You really want to bait them, punch them, and then they disappear.
Oh, okay, cool. So and if they hit you, they'll explode as well because of your shield.
Correct.
Fantastic. I mean, couldn't you then just walk into the middle of a group of them and have them, you know?
The only downfall is if you get outside of that square, you're not charging that crystal.
That's true. That's true. All right. So how did it fare with Anathema?
It went really well, actually. The only times that I had to worry was sometimes when I jumped off the platform, I would actually swap to the face puncher and a white elephant and just shoot from afar. Sometimes that was fun. It was very dependent on where Anathema was. So you really had to exactly come to a decision at that moment and said, Anathema's that far, I should probably go in range. If I'm jumping in and I'm real close, okay, I'll go punch Anathema and I'll be good to go.
Interesting. All right. What about Scourge the Invincible Martyr?
Very similar. The only real pain of that fight is when you go into the little in-between phases when he teleports you into those other rooms, and you got those flying mobs. Flying mobs you can't punch. So you're in this build, you're doing a lot. You could be doing a lot of swapping. If that is not your thing, don't go with this build.
Totally understandable. What do you feel this build excels at the most?
I feel this excels the most at single target damage. Okay. The AoE only happens when you're triggering your Cub and your shield gets depleted. Other than that, you're just going to every single guy and punching and punching and punching, or you're shooting your face puncher. And if you have the white elephant, you're getting a little bit splashed there, but I like to just go in and punch. It's just so satisfying.
So you wouldn't go to Athena's and like mob everything. You're more straight to Tron.
You can go straight to Tron, but yeah, you're pretty much right there. Unless you go to run to one each guy one at a time, just punch, 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 and you just run him around.
That's a lot of punching.
It is.
So about that skill tree, how do you feel about the 5 points recently added to the game alongside Psycho Creek and the Fantastic Fustercluck?
Now that we have another skill tree, I feel that those extra 5 points has helped us make more build diversity when it comes into play. Because when we were down to 3 trees, you could essentially get 2 full capstones and half. So now that we have another full tree to play with, more points, the better.
Yeah, and we got, did we get 2 capstones in your build? Or no, we didn't even.
No.
Just the one in the purple tree.
Yep.
Interesting. Not necessary, you don't think, to grab another capstone?
Not necessarily, because in the green tree, Forge would just regenerate ammo. If I'm not shooting guns and I'm just punching away, I don't need to really regenerate ammo. And the blue tree, again, it's applying an AoE when I'm shooting my gun. So again, since I'm not shooting that much, there's no real point.
That's a great point. All right, totally understandable. Purple tree it is. So do you feel that this build stood to benefit greatly from having those extra 5 points?
Yes, of course, because I was able to get down, like the important one was I wanted to get down to that green tree where I can get the Specialist Bear. Because Cub has both of the same weapons and I have those points. That's an easy 60% damage when it comes to Cub. And with the most recent update to Cub having the proper mayhem scaling, that 60% goes even further, which is very nice to have.
Such a great improvement to Iron Cub as well. If you, by chance, had 4 more points to add to your talent tree, where would you put them?
This is an interesting one because I would not go with more damage.
Would actually, health mitigation or?
Yeah, we would actually go into the red tree. So we would be a little bit everywhere in all trees. And the 4 points I would put into the red tree, it's armored infantry. So that's the skill at the top right. So we put 4 points in there. So we would gain gun damage, which not necessarily would help us, but the damage reduction while we're running around trying to punch people would be really nice to have.
Survivability. Oh yeah, especially, yeah, man. If you're just punching people, ooh, that survivability is probably not super great.
With, coupled in with all that regeneration, like you were saying prior, it would really help keep her alive even more.
Great. So what weapons and gear will be utilized for this build?
All right, lots of fun. Ooh. So our main weapon we're going to be using is the fairly recent upgraded Psycho Stabber.
Ooh.
Because we got the increased melee damage. So you got that 340% melee damage. Punchy, melee damage equals yay! But, like mentioned earlier, I'm not using the action skill active anointment. We're actually using the 300/90. Because the point of the build is when we punch, we want to apply a status effect. And that status effect, as we know with all of our talents, is going to increase our fuel, give us health regen, stop Cub using fuel, all that stuff working in together. So we just want to punch once.
All right.
And when we punch, we do the high dot damage. So that 300% is applied to that dot as well. So that's going to be our main weapon. However, there are mobs that are immune to fire and they will not get a dot. So I have also provided a second Psycho Stabber with the, while terrified, you're getting 75% cryo damage. So yes, we do have terror in this build as well.
That's awesome. You don't understand. I have a history with terror and I love terror builds. But anyway, go ahead.
But how we're applying that terror, our third gun is a face puncher. So we have the actions, the on melee attack, you have a 25% chance to apply terror. In here, we got the ×7 version. We didn't go with the ×14 because in the end, 25%, you have 7 bullets. If all 7 bullets hit, you should be terrified.
Ooh.
Mathematically speaking, unless you're really bad luck. And that fourth gun, as mentioned earlier, I'm using a Zaitsev Eruption, and I'm only using that for our single target when it comes to boss to debuff them. If you're running around and you want to debuff with the Zaitsev, by all means, go ahead and do so, but you don't really have to. And that's it for the guns. Now, for our shields, I have provided you many stingers. And the reason why I gave you the many stingers is because each of them have different elements. So for those who may not have known, the element on your resistance on that shield, if this shield procs so that we get that Nova, it's applied to the element of that resistance. So meaning, I currently have one with fire on. When my shield breaks or when I activate Iron Cub, it's going to do a fire Nova.
Ah.
So when I'm fighting Trant, I swap to the shock one.
Smart.
So that's why I provided many stingers. In your grenade slot, you got an It's Piss, because why not more debuff?
Debuffs galore, man.
But because you love terror, I also gave you, while terrified, you get increased damage and fire rate.
Ah, sweet. That's the best anoint.
Because the damage applies to everything. So it even applies to my melee, it applies to the face puncher, it applies to all of my white elephants if you're shooting said face puncher.
Does it apply to your Nova?
It does.
Ah! Sweet. That's so awesome.
For our artifact, I've provided many, but the main one you're going to use is Unleash the Dragon.
Okay.
And the reason being we're using the Unleash the Dragon is because on melee, you have an ignite chance, 100% ignite chance. So you're going to apply a status effect all the time.
Oh my God.
That also applies to your slide and your slam. So anything that you do to get into proximity, you can apply a dot.
Nice.
Now, for the cases of if you need to be of ranged or you don't want to go punch things, I have provided you many artifacts that give you static charge. So whenever you're shooting your face puncher, it does like a chain lightning, kind of like a brainstormer. But then I've given you the knife drain. So if you want to keep yourself with sustain, so you can do that. I've given you the corrosive stone. So you can apply corrosive damage on top of that. So I've given you all of the elements to make sure that whenever you grab our save file, you're good to go. And I mentioned earlier too, I've given you the option to use white elephants because we've increased our splash damage and we can use that fire and escape extend. So again, I've given you all the artifact of all the elements with the white elephant suffix.
Wow. Very generous of you.
Got to give the people what they need.
That's so insane. This is a lot. This is a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. But one big thing that I really want to focus on is our class mod.
Okay.
So we're using the Flare. The Flare was introduced in DLC 4 in the Krieg's DLC. And everyone was complaining about this class mod because they were saying that this only applies in Iron Bear. And we already have 2 class mods that apply when you're piloting Iron Bear. And I agree with them. They're absolutely right. But what I feel that Gearbox had in the back of their mind, I think Cub was already invented at that time. I'm a firm believer that Cub was there because when they developed this class mod, the text says gains up to 100% damage while Iron Bear is active, decreasing as Iron Bear spends fuel. So since Cub has fuel, I theorized and I said, hang on, Cubs have been running around, Cub has fuel, this might work. And lo and behold, it does.
Sweet.
So with our skills, with all of our status effect, we're trying to maintain fuel to be as high as we possibly can because this 100% damage, just like your favorite Terranoid, that damage is applied to everything.
Oh.
Explosions, melee, the Nova from the shield, Cub, everything.
What?
So this DLC has made the Flare class mod absolutely bonkers if you want to go down that route.
Where do you get that again? Because
it is in DLC 4. I believe it's more of a world drop, but hopefully you get it.
Sounds awesome. I have become I'm a Flak main, but I've casually been becoming a Moze main, so it's definitely something on the list now. Goodness, that's awesome. Okay, so
you can think about like you were saying earlier, like your action skill active or any other build that actually uses Iron Bear with the fuel. The Flare class mod can help you. The only downfall to this is when the fuel gets down below half, then you get to notice the damage coming down. And you can actually do class mod swapping if you choose to. But again, if you're not a fan of that, don't do it.
Yeah, that's understandable and more difficult when you're playing in groups. But
100% correct.
yeah, you can't be in the middle of a takedown and trying to swap your class mods. It's just not gonna work out.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, so what anointments should players aim for?
If you're gonna do the punchy, go with the 300/90 on the Psycho Stabber. If you choose to do the range and you have a face puncher, you can go down the terror route. Because we don't have that anymore, sad face, you could always go with an increased splash damage, or you can go the action skill active as well. That would also work if you want to go down the white elephant path. Or
we can get your save file.
Sure.
Sweet. Awesome. Okay, so what gear, if anything, would you consider essential for this build?
I would say the Psycho Stabber 300/90, the face puncher for the range guys, and then just one stinger. You can go with the flare and the artifact. I think those are really the main ones that really you're going to use all the time. The debuffing and all that, you don't really necessarily need it, but it's a nice to have.
Very nice to have. Are there any specific roles that you consider ideal as class-specific passives on your class mod?
Melee would be a big one. And because we're doing a lot of damage with that on shield break of the stinger, if you can get splash, that would actually be awesome as well.
Interesting. Okay. What shield did you say you use? The stinger? Is that
the stinger? Yeah.
Where do we get that?
You get that from Anathema in the Guardian Takedown.
Oh,
and the ones I provided gives you the on action skill start effect. So that's why when Cub is ready to go, you can actually position yourself in the middle of a group, trigger him, and then you create that Nova right off the bat and clear mobs right away.
Well, there's several artifacts that you mentioned as well. Can you go through them again? Just, I don't know, sure. just for clarity's sake, because I know that you mentioned switching them out and yeah, if you could just go over those, that'd be great.
Not a problem. So if we're going to go with the melee route, you want to go punchy around, you want an Unleash the Dragon. That's going to be applying your fire dot all the time. That, in my personal opinion, is essential. And if you can get the passives like melee damage and increased incendiary damage, beautiful.
Okay.
For your ranged ones, if you want to talk about mobbing or multi-mob, like multiple enemies, you could go with the static charge suffix. So that static charge suffix, when you're shooting or even when you're punching, will apply a chain lightning, kind of like the brainstorm.
Right.
And then, like I said, for the prefixes for all those, I gave you all the different elements. So you can actually element match based on whatever mob type that you're fighting.
That's crazy. That's so awesome.
But if you feel that your sustain is low, I've also given you a knife drain static charge. So you can melee or shoot with a face puncher and heal yourself. Sweet. And then the other suffix that I provided was a white elephant. And for those who may not be familiar with the white elephant, when you do a melee attack, you have a 30% chance to put a sticky bomb on that mob. And then it takes a second or two and they explode. And again, I've given you all the different elements again, so you can match elements because that element dictates what damage that sticky bomb does.
Cool. Okay, so you mentioned it's piss grenade. Is that your main grenade mod that you use?
Correct. So I'm using that for the terrified anointment that I have. So I'm getting that increased damage and fire rate.
Right. Okay.
And then when we're going to that single target damage, I'm actually using the Zaitsev. I'm actually debuffing with Zaitsev, throwing its piss grenade. Then the Zaitsev actually hits him again. Then I swap to my Psycho Stabber and hit my action skill. And then you see it's like over 400 million dot ticks on Sponge Boss.
You mentioned when we were talking off camera that you got up to 600 million?
675 million per tick.
That's insane. That's so much damage.
And because my chat wanted to really see how this worked, they're like, Wolf, you got to make him a raid boss. So I enraged him, got him to kill a whole bunch of mobs. He became level 72. And I did that. He died still in 2 seconds.
Wow. That's so cool. Okay, so in case players haven't ground out all the stuff, they don't have access to save files or on console, whatnot, what could be a suitable stopgap until you have the optimal loot needed?
So you can go with a face puncher if you're not having good luck with a psycho stabber. However, they're both vanilla, so I don't feel that they would be very difficult to get. The stinger, some people have a hard time in the Guardian takedown, and I completely understand. A good stopgap for that would be Brawler's Ward from Grave Ward. So in that case, you can actually get a Brawler's Ward when your shield is depleted, that you increase your melee damage by 300%. So again, you're just helping yourself out with that melee damage. You're just not getting that Nova, so you're just vulnerable and you're running around. Its piss is vanilla. However, the class mod, if you're going to go down the route and use the white elephants, you could always go with a blast master because you're not going to be reloading, so you're going to increase your splash damage when it comes to that. Trying to think what other ones that we can go with. Minesweeper, if you're going to shoot and you're going to hit crits, you can use the Minesweeper. And if you're going to have Cub out there, you could also use a Rocketeer to increase your Skag's Den damage. Or if you use a Raging Bear, you can help increase your Cub's damage as well.
So many options. Fantastic. Thank you.
The one thing that I find with Moze, and unfortunately I feel bad for Flack and I feel bad for Zane, but our class mod diversity on Moze herself is probably the best of the game.
Yeah. Moze has a lot of great options, which you've showcased here today. Which is insane. Moze is a melee character? What? I mean, we normally think of Amara as a melee character, but why not? We last episode we also thought of Flack as the crit guy. Now it's Zane. So, whatever. Everybody's switching it up these days. So what Guardian rank talents should players focus on to get the most bonus stats for this build?
So for Guardian rank, obviously we want to go with down melee damage in the Enforcer tree. If you're going to be going down the white elephant, the grenade damage can probably help if you're going with a Minesweeper. On top of that, let's go with like shield capacity to try and keep your sustain up as well in the survivor tree. If you want to go down the hunter tree, we're doing a lot of elemental damage, so that's probably the best way to go.
What specific Guardian rank talents though in those trees on the right side would you say that we should focus on?
Groundbreaker is a great one.
Yeah.
Because we're always doing melee and it's all based on that 5-second window. And one of my faves, and even to this day, I can't live without it and I miss it in Arms Race, is Too Angry to Die.
Yeah.
When you're in fight for your life, I like to hit something and that life bar going higher and higher and higher.
Very useful for this build. Okay, so what Guardian rank talents, if any, should a player disable to use this build?
You can leave them all on.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to turn any of them off. Enjoy it.
All right. Okay, so are there any Mayhem modifiers that one should keep an eye out for that will enhance this build, or are you playing on Mayhem 11?
Both.
Ooh.
And honestly, I'd probably stick with Mayhem 10 on this one.
Okay, why? And what modifiers?
Speed Demon.
That's your favorite, though. Isn't that the one you said last? That's your favorite. You just love going fast in Iron Bear.
But you also have to go fast to get into melee range. So that's where it's really benefiting here.
And you got that extra 12% movement speed damage from the tree as well.
Yeah.
You're going to zoom. Are you Zane? Hello?
I feel like we should go into, one of those car commercials, zoom, zoom.
Yeah, right? Zoom, zoom. How did you test this build?
So, like all build testers, we always start with Athenas. We always got to let those Malawan guys feel the pain.
Yeah.
But then after Malawan, I personally really enjoy to go down some type of COV map. And I always go down the Anvil because we got a mix of COV. You got a mix of the shield bar. You got the armor bar. And the tinks. Those enhanced tinks are a pain in the butt. And if you can handle them good, your build's going somewhere.
They got those 3 bars. That's nuts.
Yes.
So you can test every single element. That's great.
Exactly. And then on this one, I went actually to Slaughter Shaft. I really wanted to see how this would perform in the Slaughter Shaft because I knew as well there were some of the psychos that are immune to fire. So I really wanted to see how that Terror Cryo worked and see if I had to go down a different route. But since we did good, why not?
So weird. Terror cryo. Oh, awesome. I love that you just made that up. It's great.
You got to be unique. You have to.
For sure, especially when making these amazing builds. Like it's a very unique thing to still be using terror after it's out of season.
Yeah. Then of course, after testing those areas out, I was really happy with where the build was at. And I always have to go do the takedowns. I have to see how they fare, because if somebody comes into chat and says, hey, I tried this build and I could only do this, were you able to do so? And I always like to say, yes, I could, or no, I couldn't, because of these exact certain reasons, because I'm a huge fan of honesty, and I want to make sure that whatever I promote and whatever I put out there, that I can either do or I can't do, and I let you know why. And I think the biggest pain in the butt boss fight for this build was Wotan.
Really?
All his jumping around and him going on top of the pillars, you always had to keep swapping to be able to actually do damage to him.
Did you try to melee him?
When he was on the ground.
I need to see this. It's so insane. Okay. What were some of your initial impressions when you tested this build?
So my first thought of even making this build was, I was in a chat and somebody was going, oh my God, they showcased the new tree. Why in the living heck did they give Moze status effect and status effect damage? She doesn't do anything with it. And I'm going, challenge accepted. So once I read that in chat and I said, I got to do this. So I looked at a lot of the previous builds that went down a certain route, or what gun can apply a huge damage over time. And it was always pointing to the Unleash the Dragon.
It's nuts. That's awesome. It's really cool that you figured this out.
I had to be that guy. I had to prove people wrong.
Always that guy breaking people's computers, making crazy builds. That's why we have you on the show. So what did the numbers look like compared to similar builds, both ones you have crafted and ones you've seen other community members display?
So for single target, since that is our big damage, I know Moxie loves to say that he does such big numbers that you can't even see them.
Can't even.
I can't get there.
Yeah.
However, if you add all my ticks over time, I can.
I mean, it's crazy though. Like 600. What did you say? 675 million damage per tick.
Per tick.
That's insane.
So if you add them up, the numbers could technically disappear in your head.
Too much math.
Right.
Do you feel there are any changes that Gearbox can make to the game that would further refine this build without making it drastically over or underpowered?
I would love to have a different type of way to have long range melee. Like, give me a gun that I can melee and it shoots out an arm, or it does something that gives a range instead of actually like shooting a pellet or something like that. I think giving us that little thing so that I actually hit the melee button and it does its thing and it applies melee damage, I think that would be super cool.
Weird. I like it. I mean, Borderlands is into weird, so I'm sure it's not out of the realm of possibility. Who knows? Maybe they're listening.
Maybe.
Well, shoot, we're finally at the end. This has been so insane. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
Third time's a charm, man. This is an insane build. I'm really excited to see it in action, and I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on it. Is there a build that you can maybe take 15 seconds to tease for your next appearance?
Because you were talking about Action Skill Active, okay, I'll talk about her.
Yay.
Her name is the Flare Witch Project. And the reason because of the name is because, again, we're using that Flare class mod, coupling with the Action Skill Active, and we're using guns and grenade with both the Action Skill Active anointments. Because why? Because we can. Because we
can. Iron Cub is amazing that way.
That's right.
Well, this has been insane. Thank you so much, Psychotic Wolf, for joining us. Where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/psychotic_wolf. Or if you're on Twitter, you can find me at P_wolf82.
Sweet. And I'm SchviftyFive. You can find me everywhere. SchviftyFive on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, all the good stuff. Blazing a trail through Pandora and beyond, Premier Moze is a build that allows you to dismiss every enemy you face with a simple Das Vidanya. The vicious Vladov Vixen and her beloved Iron Cub have never looked better, and Wolf's new build assures that nothing will stand before her might. We're heating up the competition and having our beloved baby bear become a burning death machine. I dub you once again an ultimate Vault Hunter.
Thank you very much. Yes.
The much discussed 4th skill trees are out now as a part of the Designer's Cut and Season Pass 2. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you pick up the new DLC today. Thank you so much for joining us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and SoundCloud. If you'd like more details about this build, you can find a link to more information and the build in the podcast description section. We'll return in 2 weeks on January 7th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Happy looting to all you ultimate Vault Hunters out there.